Thank you so much. That was a wonderful introduction. I actually learned things that I didn't know. Like, I didn't know when the Cambridge Union was founded. So Jane, in typical Jane fashion, did her own research and went beyond the standard bio that is furnished whenever I speak. So thank you so much for that, and thank you also for being yourself a woman of influence and a fearless mother, bringing up 2 daughters, the same way I have been bringing up 2 daughters, with all the pitfalls and the problems, but we won't talk about that now. It's a real pleasure to be here, and it's great to be surrounded by so many women and a few good men. For those of you who have not heard me before, this accent is for real. I say that because when I first sort of started speaking at Cambridge and later when I moved to New York, my accent was the bane of my existence. You know how each one of us seems to have something that we wish we didn't have, like curly hair, we wanted straight hair, or height when we were short, whatever. Mine was my accent. Until I met Henry Kissinger. And he said to me, you know what? He said, stop worrying about your accent. In American public life, you can never overestimate the advantages of complete and total incomprehensibility. For me, also, this is a particularly great moment to be speaking about success and influence. As I'm doing a lot of thinking at the Huffington Post, we're doing a lot of editorial prioritizing of redefining success. And I must say, seeing the success that Women of Influence has had and what Carolyn has done since 2007 when you took it over is absolutely amazing. I did have one problem when I first met Carolyn this morning, that she looks so much like my daughters, who also have long red hair like her, and they're 22 and 24, and I could not really get over the fact that she was the president and CEO. And so I felt like wanting to protect her and make sure she was okay and that everything was being handled, and then I realized that I didn't have to at all. So as we are looking at redefining success, to move beyond the first 2 metrics of money and power, I believe that when we do that, when we define success to include the 3rd metric that involves also taking care of ourselves, our own well-being, our own wisdom, our own capacity to wonder and to give back, that we are actually going to find it easier to break through the glass ceilings. Because if you think of the women's revolutions, we first had the women's revolution that gave us the vote. The second women's revolution was about access and being able to have an equal place at the top of every field and every profession, equal opportunities, equal pay. The third women's revolution is about changing the workplace. And it is going to be led by women. It's going to be led by women because you guys designed the world and it's not working. I address the men in the room here, although they're the good men, so they're not the ones at fault. But when we redefine the workplace, men are going to be unbelievably grateful. Because right now, they have kind of equated, for example, sleep deprivation with virility. I had dinner the other night with a guy who bragged that he had only gotten 4 hours sleep the night before. And I wanted to say, I didn't say it, but I wanted to say, you know what? If you had gotten 5, this dinner would have been a lot more interesting. So we now occupy workplaces that are fueled by burnout, sleep deprivation, exhaustion, and we're paying a heavy price. If you look at the financial meltdown, for example, you're wondering, where were the CEOs? Where were the men at the top? And there was recently an article, I don't know if you read it, by the woman CFO of Lehman Brothers, who wrote in the New York Times how she had burned out. She had devoted all her life to work. She had destroyed her marriage. And she had destroyed her own personal life. And as I was reading it, I was thinking, and you know what? It didn't help Lehman Brothers either. So it's not a trade-off. We've been thinking that it's a trade-off, that when we take care of ourselves, it means we're not as committed to our work, we're not working as hard. Well, I had my own rude awakening in 2007, 2 years after I launched the Huffington Post. I fainted from exhaustion. I hit my head on my desk, I broke my cheekbone, I got 4 stitches on my right eye, and that was my own rude awakening that started me on this journey of reevaluating success, our working lives, and led to the third metric. I have to tell you one thing. I have never been more effective and productive than after 7 or 8 hours sleep, than after I meditate, or I do yoga, or I do whatever it is that helps me be in a centered place of strength and wisdom. And if you think of it, the higher you go up in whatever field you are, the more you are really judged by your judgment. It's the decisions you make. You know, if you hire the wrong person, you're going to really pay for it in wasted time and resources, if nothing else. So I have found that if I'm in a place of strength and wisdom inside myself, no matter what happens, I can deal with it much more effectively. If I'm exhausted, run down, burned out, I'm reactive, and that's when the worst mistakes happen. So we now have the statistics also to show, you know, the billions of dollars that both Canadian business and US business loses every year because of stress, because of absenteeism, because of healthcare costs, and how much of that can be prevented. Also, as I get older, I realize that ultimately, you want to enjoy your life. This is not a dress rehearsal. It's not like you're going to work really, really hard and then you're going to get to that place at the top and everything will be perfect. Life is always a mixture of great things happening and bad things happening. That's never going to change. It's just our own attitude to how we deal with everything. So as an employer now, for example, at the Huffington Post, we have 2 nap rooms where people can go and have a nap in the middle of the afternoon if they are tired, instead of having a 5th cup of coffee or a 3rd cinnamon bar or whatever it is that they love to give them energy. Of course, the other day, I must say, these nap rooms are always full now. At the beginning, people thought nobody would ever be seen dead going into them, and now, you know, we have to open a 3rd one. But the other day, I was walking by them, and I saw 2 people coming out of a nap room. And, you know, I thought to myself, whatever it takes to recharge you, just don't tell HR, right? We also have weekly yoga classes, meditation classes, breathing exercises, and we even launched an app that I highly recommend. It's free. It was actually sponsored by Weight Watchers because of the connection between stress and weight. And it's called GPS for the Soul. And you download it, and it gives you a proxy for stress, your heart rate variability, and then you can launch a guide with the things that help you course correct. Because what is amazing is how quickly we can get back into a place of peace and centeredness if we don't let the stress accumulate too much. I was reading an amazing book recently by Mark Williams, professor of clinical psychology at Oxford, whom I met in Davos. He was teaching CEOs to meditate, so this thing is becoming mainstream. And in that book, he writes about gazelles. You know, gazelles run really, really hard when there is a danger. And then when the danger, the lion, passes, they graze. That's what we need to learn to do. We are running hard all the time. We are in a perpetual fight or flight mode. So when we look at the women of influence that we can be inspired by, the role models, please look for women who have managed to integrate that centeredness into their lives. Because if you think of it, when you go to a funeral or a memorial and people are eulogized, what are they eulogized over? Have you ever heard anybody eulogized by saying, and you know what, she reached an SVP position in her company? Have you ever heard that? No, people are eulogized because of their wisdom, their giving, their generosity, their ability to spread joy. So even as we are reaching these high positions, let's also integrate this third metric. And then life is amazingly transformed, and our workplace is transformed. So as we break through glass ceilings, we can also be changing the glass ceilings. We don't want simply to have 50% of the world as it is right now. We want to have 50 or 60%, whatever it may be, of a world that is going to be much more compatible with our own ability to lead lives that are fueled by well-being, wisdom, and wonder. And then I am absolutely convinced that we are going to be able to create a world that is much more harmonious and much less driven by terrible mistakes. Right now we are careening from one manufactured crisis to another, you may have noticed. You know, you look at so many leaders in business, in politics, in media, making terrible decisions, not because they're not smart, but because they're not wise. So we need to tap into that wisdom, and it will have a huge, huge influence in everything we do. And one of the main problems that we're having in addition is that we're all so hyper-connected with technology that it's harder for us to disconnect. I'm amazed to see how few people here are on their devices. This is normally not the case. Most people think they're multitasking. They are listening and they are looking at their devices. Well, there is new neuroscientific evidence now that shows that there is no such thing as multitasking. You are task switching. And it is the most exhausting thing you can do for your brain. So just kind of enjoy it. It doesn't always have to be doing 2 or 3 things at once. It's now very hard to actually walk down a street and not see people on their phone or with their iPod in their ears. And it's so hard to have silence. One of the things I used to do, I would walk into my apartment and I would turn on the TV. I'm sure a lot of people do that. I don't do that anymore. It's the same stuff. Just go on the front page of HuffPost Canada and you'll have everything you need to know in like 2 minutes. Otherwise you're just hearing the same thing, and you hear the same pundits repeating the same things they just read in the Huffington Post or the Globe and Mail or the Toronto Star in the morning. And then silence is an amazing way for us to recharge ourselves. Recharging and renewal is a performance enhancement tool. It's not laziness. If you look at great, great athletes, now in the Olympic training for athletes, they've integrated naps. They all get 9 and 10 hours sleep. Just go and read. When performance really matters, taking care of yourself is key. How much rest you get, how much exercise you get, all that is essential to your performance. And if you read, I'm a terrible tennis player, so I love to read about great tennis players. It's like something I aspire to and I know I will never attain. And I read, for example, how when you've really mastered the game, the way the ball comes at you slows down. If you're a bad tennis player like me, it also comes at you all the time and you're just trying to deal with it. And it's the same thing if you've mastered the game, whether it's the game at work, the game of life, the game of tennis, everything slows down. And it means you can deal with it. You're bigger than the challenges. And that's the key. Stress comes when we feel we are smaller than the challenges and we contract. So now I actually physically take deep breaths and expand. When I hear bad news, when something happens I'm not happy with, instead of contracting, I expand to include it. To basically say, I'm bigger than that. And then I love, a quote by Rumi, one of my favorite poets, who said, live life as everything is rigged in your favor. So often we live life as though we are a victim, as though everything is rigged against us. And yet if you look back at your life, so often the things that were the biggest heartbreaks led you to where you are now. I know in my life, I remember when I lived in England, I was in love with a man who was twice my age and half my size. But love is blind. And I very much wanted to marry him and have children with him, but he didn't want to marry me or have children. He only wanted to have cats. So because I was determined to have children, I was 30 by then, I left London and moved to New York in order to escape this man. And everything that happened to me, my books, my children, the Huffington Post, happened because a man wouldn't marry me. So remember that when things go badly. So whenever I look back at the worst things in my life, I know Carolyn asked me to talk about my successes, but I prefer to talk about my failures. Because I think what is very important for women is to recognize that failure is not the opposite of success. It's a stepping stone to success. And there is no one who has succeeded who has not failed along the way. If you never fail, it means you haven't really tried anything super difficult. So I remember when I wrote my second book, Jane mentioned my first book, which was very successful. She didn't mention my second book, which was a complete flop. So let me mention it. So my second book was rejected by 36 publishers. In the process of getting one rejection after another, I ran out of money that I had made from my first book. So I thought maybe that I should change professions and do something else. And I kind of rather depressed. I was walking down St. James's Street in London, and I saw Barclays Bank. And I walked into the bank, and armed with nothing but a lot of Greek chutzpah, I asked to see the bank manager, and I asked for a loan. And for some reason, he gave it to me. And that changed my life, because it made it possible for me to continue getting rejections until finally I got an acceptance. And I still sent him a Christmas card every year. His name was Ian Bell. And for me, it was a little bit like in a fairy tale, when you have the hero or the heroine lost in a dark forest, and then suddenly the helpful animals come out to help them find their way out of the forest. Well, in life, too, there are helpful animals disguised as bank managers. Or whatever it is that you need at the time, who come in front of you right when you need them. And if you look back at your life, you will remember those moments. And it's very important to remember them regularly, because gratitude is an incredible emotion, and we don't feel enough of it. Colette, the French writer, wrote in her memoirs, "I had such a wonderful life, I just wish I had realized it sooner." And very often our minds focus on what is not working rather than what is working. And that's one of the issues that we women especially are dealing with. As we are facing challenges in the workplace, as we are facing institutional barriers, there's no question there are still institutional barriers that we need to overcome, but we also need to overcome our own internal barriers. What I call the obnoxious roommate living in our head. That voice that puts us down, that basically from the moment we wake up tells us we're not good enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not smart enough. You men have that voice too, but you can shut it down and go watch a football game. We women have to sort of wrestle it into the ground. So I remember I was on Stephen Colbert's show recently, and I said to him, Stephen, I said, my obnoxious roommate is sarcastic. She sounds exactly like you. And he said I had to find a place to crash. But you can deal with that voice. I mean, now my obnoxious roommate, which used to be incredibly intense and loud, only makes guest appearances. I've kind of trained her, like you train a child, you know, with humor, with observation, to not really be the master of the game. And for me, that is essential. In the same way that it's essential not to allow our minds to move into negative fantasies. That's why, you know, there is this whole movement now around mindfulness and being in the present. It makes incredible sense, because if you think of it, the one thing we have that separates us from animals, that we can go into the past and go into the future in our minds, but it's also an incredible curse, because it means we can never let the past die and be really present, and we keep being anxious about the future. Montaigne said that there were many terrible things in my life, but most of them never happened. So in order to do this journey of work and life with more joy and more effectiveness, we need a tribe. And that's really partly what Women of Influence is. It's your own tribe where you can connect with each other. You can connect with your coaches. You can really support each other on this journey. It's harder to do it alone. And when you find your own tribe and you look at the goals as not just climbing up the ladder, but as incorporating, integrating every part of your life, then everything changes. Padma Sri Warrior is a brilliant woman who is the CTO of Cisco, an engineer who spoke at our third metric conference in New York. And she was saying how she doesn't like the term work-life balance as much, because she prefers work-life integration. Because the truth is that it's never going to be perfectly balanced. You know, there are days when your work demands more of you, and you need to be much more present for your work. And there are days when your child is sick, or when you have, your child has a performance. Obviously, it's not going to be balanced every day. What matters is overall, is your life a life that has balance, and where every aspect of you, everything that matters to you, is actually taken care of. And that includes making sure that you know what to say no to. That's a big problem for us women. You know, no is a complete sentence. Did you know that? You don't have to say no because. No. And did you also know that you can complete a project by dropping it? You don't always have to finish a book if you don't like it. You don't always even have to finish a movie. You can leave in the middle of a movie. In my case, I had all these things that I was going to do, like learn German, learn to be a good skier. And then at 40, I just made a list of all the things I was really not going to invest time in doing or getting better at, and I dropped them. As far as I'm concerned, I have completed German, I've completed skiing. When I go skiing with my daughters, they ski, I read a book by the fire, drinking hot chocolate. It's heaven. So the reason for doing that is because any project that you've started in your mind drains energy. Your mind doesn't know if this is for real or you're going to get back to it or not. So just have a conversation with yourself and say, you know what, these projects are done, over. And then you have energy for the things that you are really going to commit yourself, and you are really going to give 100% of yourself in. Because for me, one of my favorite little saying is, 100% is a breeze, 99% is a bitch. You know, just putting, whenever I decide to do something, I want to be 100% committed to it. That doesn't mean ignoring my other needs, but it means that when I'm in it, I'm really in it. And that means often saying no to good things. to things that you might want to do, but would get in the way of sleep or get in the way of being with your children or whatever it is that's also very important to you. And I know for me, for example, ever since I made sleep important, what I did is I created a completely device-free sanctuary in my bedroom. I do not take my Blackberries. I have 4 of them. Thank you, Blackberry. I love you. Please never go down. I only take real books because there's a lot of science now that shows that screens interfere with your sleep. And you know what? It's okay if you take a sleeping tablet once in a while because you need it, but if you cannot go to sleep without a sleeping tablet, you need to make some changes. And yet there's an epidemic around that now of people who literally cannot sleep without a sleeping tablet. We have a dedicated sleep section on the Huffington Post. We have so many tips that you are totally going to master it. And the key is disconnecting from technology. The number of people who sleep with their devices next to their bed and their excuse is, you know what, I need it as my alarm clock. Have you heard that? Do you have Pottery Barn in Canada? You do? Okay, Pottery Barn, $35. Great vintage alarm clocks. They look beautiful on your nightstand. I have a lot of answers to any excuses you have about your sleep. You're a simulator. Ask it when it comes to question time. But the bottom line is everything from these little things that seem trivial to the bigger things of what are our priorities, what do we value, what do we want our lives to be about. It's all really of a piece because the little things help us to get the big things right. And let me just end by quoting one of my absolute favorite Greeks, Archimedes, who said, "Give me a place to stand and I can move the world." And that's really very much what every religion, whether it's Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism, says. At the center of every religion is what the Bible says. The kingdom of God is within. In every religion, it's the same message, which means that we all have that place in us of strength, wisdom, harmony, peace. And most of the time, we are not living in it. So if we can increase the time we spend there, we can truly transform both our work life and our whole life. And so find your place to stand, you know, that place of wisdom and peace and strength. And from that place, let's lead the third women's revolution and remake the world in your own image, according to your own definition of success, so that all of us, women and men, can live our lives with more grace, more joy, more empathy, more gratitude, and yes, more sleep. Thank you.
That was amazing. Arianna Huffington, thank you so much. Please enjoy your lunch. Don't forget to fill out your ballots and think about your questions for Arianna, and we'll get back to you in about a half an hour or so. Hello again. We're going to open up the floor to questions. We'll just wait for Arianna to come back to the stage. Just a couple of things to note. There are 2 microphones in the room. One is this way, and the other one, oh, there we go. It's just being set up over here. So please head to the microphone. Don't be shy. There's no such thing as a dumb question, really. There's not. We do have a limited amount of time, though, so try to keep your questions succinct, and that way Arianna can address everything. Are you ready? I don't see anyone yet, so I'm going to ask you the first question. Did you encounter some resistance when you discovered the third metric?
I like the idea of discovering the third metric. You know what is absolutely stunning is that there was no resistance. There was this amazing hunger to learn more about it and to implement it. And just to give you an idea, Mika Brzezinski and I, you know, Mika is a co-host of Morning Joe in the States. I don't know if you get it here, do you? And so she and I decided to have a small conference in my home with a few people who had been writing about it, practicing it, and just kind of take it to the next level. I had just moved into my apartment in Soho in New York. It took months, you know, for every piece of furniture to arrive, as you can imagine. And as we were coming to June 6th, the day of the conference, we're getting so many emails from people saying, I want to be there, I want to be there, that we ended up with 340 people in my apartment. The day the last piece of furniture arrived, movers came and took all the furniture out in order to put ballroom chairs to fit more people there. And we had an amazing group of women. Deloitte was the sponsor. Thank you very much, Deloitte. And people from Valerie Jarrett to the CEO of Whole Foods, John Mackey, to the CEO of Aetna, just to give you a few examples that this is now already part of corporate life. The CEO of Aetna discovered the hard way the importance of all these things. He had a terrible skiing accident, broke his neck, was hooked on narcotics for a year, and then he discovered that meditation, yoga, acupuncture changed everything for him. So he made those benefits available to his 34,000 Aetna employees, and now he wants to make them available to everyone. And a lot of other health insurance companies are realizing that you can really reduce healthcare costs substantially if people change the way they do their lives. And also, so many women there who are juggling, like everybody in this room. I remember Cindy Levy, the editor of Glamour, and her advice was just decide what you're going to focus on and recognize a lot of things will be left undone. He said in her case, all the plants in her apartment are dead. But her children are alive and Glamour is doing well.
Okay,
so,
sorry.
You know, don't be a perfectionist is the story here, because women have this perfectionism in us. And if something is not perfect, we're not going to focus on what we did well, we are going to focus on what we didn't do well. And we need to change that. Can you please all change that when you leave this ballroom tonight?
We need another roommate, not the obnoxious one.
Exactly.
All right, we've got a question over there. Go right ahead.
Hi, my name's Marcia. My company is Yes, Marcia. I know you've spoken before about being of service being an important part of wellness and the third metric. And I wondered whether you feel like it's important to have specific practices in place in terms of doing service, or whether it's just something that you should think about in general.
Great question. In fact, I just wrote about it this week, so my blog is up on HuffPost. Interestingly enough, Mary Gordon is here today, who is the founder of Roots of Empathy. Mary, where are you? Over there. So Mary is just amazing because she took this program, Roots of Empathy, and it's now in many, many schools all over Canada. It started here in Toronto and in 11 countries, and it's basically about how service and empathy, which is basically the root of service is empathy, start with children. So what are we doing at school to encourage the cultivation of empathy? Because if you look at the problems we're facing, you know, with gang violence and antisocial behavior, a lot of it is when people lack empathy. And I think starting early, starting with children, and having whatever it is your passion, working with children, working with older people, it doesn't have to be leaving the country and going to a faraway place to be of service. It can be right here in our own neighborhood. But it also starts with our own co-workers, our own neighbors. It's just really a function of how we respond to people. I was blessed to have a mother who could not have an impersonal relationship. So wherever she went, you could go shopping at Jones, for example, she would immediately know everything about the shop assistant. And a FedEx man would come to deliver a packet in our home, she would invite them to go into the kitchen, eat something she had made, etc., etc. If you approach life with that approach, it really changes everything. I was in Hawaii last week because we launched HuffPost Hawaii. And Hawaii, for those of you who've been there, has that spirit, the aloha spirit, which is when they ask you how you are, you feel that they really care. And every big thing we did, we had a third metric lunch there, starts with a blessing. And I love that because it sort of centers you. It calms everything down and connects us with ourselves. So it can start with very little things, is what I'm saying. And it can be a huge project that can help change the world.
Okay, we'll go to this side of the room. Go ahead with your question.
Hi, Arianna. Your speaking ability is utterly tremendous. Thank you so much. If I could, I'd like to get a little corporate for a moment. As we as women are re-engineering ourselves and how we view ourselves and how we work in the world, I'd like to know your thoughts in terms of quotas for women on boards or engineering women into leadership positions. And is this something that should be happening? Is it stopgap? Do we wait? I'd love to know your views.
Well, as you know, there is this proposition that passed in California to encourage, not to mandate, but to encourage more women on boards. I think more women on boards would be fantastic. It would be critical because we need that perspective that we talked about to permeate corporations. I don't believe in quotas. I think quotas create an environment that in the end does not support our goals. Because I think we have to change three things at once. We have to change all the institutional barriers. The fact that so many men prefer to hire other men to kind of perpetuate the boys' club atmosphere. We have to change the barriers inside our heads that Women of Influence is doing a lot to change by creating these tribal coaching support systems, including gender intelligence, which I love as a concept. And we have to change the workplace. We have to change all three things at once because there are women who don't want to make the sacrifices in terms of their well-being and life that at the moment the current workplace requires. So I think when we change all these three things at once, we are going to see the greater number of women at the top of every sphere that we want. And also, at the same time, we need to realize that we need to give women equal respect for whatever their choices are. If a woman is able to be a mother and doesn't have to work, let's say, financially, I think there should be a choice that is incredibly respected and not be seen as anything less important than a woman who is an SVP in an important corporation. I think that woman is a woman of influence. I would love to see women of influence who may not be in corporations, who may be of influence in their own communities, who may be of influence in their own spheres of influence. And that way, I think we can expand the definition of what influence is.
Thank you for saying it as it is.
Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more question. So, yes, go to, yeah, thank you.
Hi, Arianna. You actually just spoke a little bit about this, but I wanted to get your ideas from the perspective of you as a mother. You've forged these amazing paths in every journey that you've taken. I work with women across Canada who are moms, who have chosen to own their own business as well. I just wanted to get your take, with your 2 daughters that you have, what is your hope for what they've seen you do and where you think mompreneurs can go from here?
Well, that's an absolutely wonderful question. My daughters are 22 and 24, and I see in their generation, you know, how much stress there is and how much anxiety about the future. You know, the millennial generation, believe it or not, is the most stressed generation. And so for their sake, and I'm glad to see there are a lot of millennials here, we need to open up the conversation and redefine what success is and basically ask them to trust their own definition of success. In the same way that we want women to trust what works for them in terms of what they wear. We want them to trust what works for them in terms of what a life of purpose is for them. To make sure that you don't wake up in your 50s and realize, hey, you know what, I was living somebody else's dream. That's not what I really wanted to do. That's what my mother wanted me to do, or that's what I had read in a magazine, is a life of influence. So let's keep asking ourselves that question, is that what I really want to do? Recognizing that we all have financial obligations. It's not like it's a completely blank slate. We have to make a living. But given those parameters, what is it that really is our passion? What is it that really gives meaning to our lives? And in terms of, and I would love you to write about all that, incidentally. I think that's a very important conversation that we are having right now. And I don't want this to end here. I want it to continue on the Huffington Post. My favorite thing about HuffPost is that we are a platform for these conversations to continue. And in order to make it super easy, I want to both introduce the Huffington Post Canada team that is here, and to give you my own email address, so you can bypass the Huffington Post bureaucracy and send it to me, and we'll make sure that you have special privileges. You are posted very quickly, and then you can have your own password, so you can write anytime you want. So first, my own email address is Arianna, 1 R and 2 N's, at huffingtonpost.com. That's what happens when you found a company, you get the good email address. I want to have our HuffPost Canada team stand, so people who want to know more about how they can get involved can ask you. And that's Rashida. Rashida is our general manager, Rashida Jiva. Claire Sibone, who is our living editor. And Kira LeBlanc, who is doing marketing and public relations. And you also have my email address, so we'd love to continue that conversation. And the great thing about this platform is that if you have your own blog, if you're writing on the Women of Influence website, if you're writing wherever, just cross-post it on the Huffington Post. It doesn't have to be original or exclusive. All we care about is great distribution for good content and great conversations. And just to give you an example, there was a mother who wrote on her own blog a little post called "The Day I Stopped Saying Hurry Up to My Child." And I don't know if you read it, but it had like a few hundred views, and then we cross-posted on the Huffington Post, and it has now had like 7 million page views and over 1,000,003 likes on Facebook, and it's become a sensation. And I love that because it's a beautiful post. I mean, you are not going to be able to read it without tearing up, because every mother here, every busy woman of influence who is also a mother is going to recognize herself in that mother who would basically confess that from morning till night she would tell her 6-year-old, hurry up and get dressed, hurry up and go to school, hurry up and have your breakfast, hurry up and go to bed, hurry up and go to sleep. And then she has that moment of awakening when she is on the Cape somewhere with her child, and she gives her child this special ice cream that the child loves, and the child looks up at her with plaintive eyes and says, "Mommy, do I have to hurry up?" And she realized what she was doing to her child. So in a sense, we also have that inner child in us, and we are doing that to ourselves. From morning till night, we are abusing that inner child and basically saying, hurry up and work hard and get everything done and do it perfectly, and you're not doing it perfectly, and you're like this general. And we need to change that, because it's just not working for women, for men, for polar bears. It's not working for anything, and it is in our power to change that and change it today. Thank you so much.
Very much. Don't go too far. I would like to welcome Carrie Kirkman, President and CEO from the Jones Group, to come up to the podium now.
Well, I'm hoping that Arianna will come back up. Please, come on up. So I do want to share that I feel that the beauty of these experiences provided by Women of Influence is how full we all get to feel through the words of influential women who are kind enough to share their words of wisdom. I'd like to share a couple of the biggest takeaways that I had, which were very meaningful for me. I'm going to not be as eloquent as Arianna, and I'm going to read so I don't miss anything. I love the idea of enjoy your life. It's not a dress rehearsal, and I think that that's a big one, to appreciate the day. Recharging and renewal are a performance-enhancing tool, which I think all of us can take away and figure out how to incorporate in our lives. True masteries when everything slows down, which again I think are incredible words if we really think about what that means, to have the space around how we live our life and to be appreciative and not to be pushed and rushed the way we can be. I loved live your life like everything is rigged in your favor, because I think that's just such a joyous way to approach what you do. Gratitude, which we all need more of and we need to express more of. You need a tribe, and it is really difficult to try and do it alone. So Women of Influence, try to find people that you can help along the way, because I think that's very important. I think everybody's favorite, which I really loved, is you can complete a project by dropping it. I think I'm going to be a champion of that one. And last of all, it's not about being smart, it is about being wise. And I want to thank you, Arianna, for sharing your wonderful words of wisdom with all of us. And on behalf of Women of Influence and everybody here today, really thank you so much for the experience. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And no is a complete sentence. Love that one too. Okay, before we get to the door prizes, a few announcements. First, I would like to extend a very special thank you to our Women of Influence volunteers. They help make this event possible. Thank you as well to our photographer, Tom Sandler from Tom Sandler Photography. Thank you. Information on his services can be found on your table. I know you've been so busy. I've seen you at a couple TIFF events, so I don't know how much sleep you're getting lately. Thanks to him. Now to the door prizes. Here we go. Thank you. From Beauty Boutique by Shoppers Drug Mart, a $100 gift card for Rachel Forrest. From BMO Nesbitt Burns, courtesy of Keely Doherty and Julia Yu, a selection of items. There was the deluxe gift basket, the iPod Shuffle, the LCBO gift card, and a women's set of golf gear, all valued at $275. This goes to Trisha Dara. From the Cambridge group of 3 clubs, 3 separate prizes. A 1-month membership to the Adelaide Club for Lindsay Van Stone. I know Lindsay. Is she here?
So I think we have to do the BMO again.
Okay, we have to do one again. So we'll go back and do the BMO. This prize will go to Anna. I'm sorry, Anna, if I mix up your last name. Kobolaski. She's with Ainsworth. All right, breakfast for two at the newly renovated Stratus restaurant goes to Fiona Campbell. A mani-pedi at the Adelaide Club Spa goes to Jackie Gray. A deluxe yoga kit from the Queen's School of Business for Martha Callum. From Kids and Company, an emergency backup package of 15 visits to any of our Kids and Company locations. This is valued at $350. It goes to Marianne Chilco. From McLean's, a one-year subscription for Deirdre Horgan. From Girls 20 Summit, a limited edition t-shirt designed by Tu Lai, and the winner of that is Lisa Grattan Pereira. And now we are going to draw, we need a drum roll or something for that. Thank you. Was that? Thank you. I appreciate that. For the fantastic Jones New York Prize, a fashionable day at Hudson's Bay, which includes car service to the Bay on Queen Street, lunch for two, an Estee Lauder makeover, $500 worth of Estee Lauder products, a private shopping appointment with a Jones New York fashion stylist, and $2,000 to go towards your fall wardrobe. We saw some of those great fashions today. Oh, the pressure. Jennifer Hills. Come up and claim your prize. All right. Congratulations to all of the winners. Thank you so much for being here today. Our next luncheon will be Tuesday, December the 3rd. This is featuring Kirsten Stewart and 25 top women of influence. We hope to see you then. Thanks for your time today. Have a great day.